Welcome to Dad Pod, a community for dads and men.
You gotta love them boys. I'm hanging with my boys. Just me and my boys.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of Dad Pod. I'm your host, Clay. I'm joined by my really good friend, Ron Gonzalez. He's been gracious enough on a Saturday to spend some time with me and talk about his experience. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about his experience growing up in Costa Rica. We're going to be talking about his story of his meeting his wife and how they moved from Costa Rica to the United States, and his experience as a dad of 4 kids. And one of them, I specifically wanted to speak with him particular about with all the other dads who have special needs kids, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well, and get his experience and his wisdom and knowledge in many areas. But yeah, today, Ron, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me over. It's always a pleasure to talk about what is most important in our lives, and this big task that we have been um, assigned in being a dad and trying to be the best we can in that regard. So
Yeah,
thrilled
yeah,
to be here.
absolutely. Yeah, and I'm excited because I know how good of a man and person you are. So I'm really excited to learn from your wisdom and knowledge. You know, I wanted to give some context on how we met each other first, and then I'll ask you about you growing up in Costa Rica. But Ron and I uh, got to meet each other in Argentina, where we were serving a mission for the LDS Church, and so we got to know each other very well there and had a great time. Yeah, I mean, I have so many funny stories and good memories of things there, which is for another time and another day. Uh, but yeah, and I was lucky enough that he reached out to me. We connected on you know, kind of dropped contact for a little bit while we were going to school and doing our thing, but have reconnected since, and it's been great to reconnect. So uh, yeah, I'm excited to go through this. But where I wanted to start, like with most of our guests, is understanding where you grew up and what it was like growing up in Costa Rica. You've lived in the United States for a while now, and was curious about your childhood experience and what it was like growing up as a boy in Costa Rica.
Well, Costa Rica is known for being another version of Hawaii, another version of the Garden of Eden in many senses. It's a beautiful place. Weather, it's stable. It's wonderful. You have your skin nourished and moist all year long, and yet there are a lot of challenges. Political, economically, they're experiencing not the best situations right now. Safety, it's not the best. But back in the day when I was growing up, um, I walked to school and it took me, a good kilometer or a little bit less than a mile, to walk back and forth from school. I grew up playing soccer, although you know that I'm not very good at it, but I did walk a lot and I like to run, and doing this type of activities all year long, it's different than when you have a weather that um, compartmentalize your activities, or your ability to go out and enjoy the outdoors. So I think I took advantage of that as much as we could. Um, so it was like a lot of outdooring experiencing. What I would say is that the scale of things, it's very different. So growing up, um, we barely had a car instead of having two or three. you know.
Yeah.
Uh, we barely had the means to put gas on that car to go somewhere, and that brought perspective of how things are achieved, and that you got to work hard in order to even plan on a vacation or make things with your family. As specifically, buying time or affording time to spend quality time with the family was something that I was taught um, through my dad. I think he did a great job on that. But it's not normal. It's not normal to see that in my culture or where I grew up. Um, Dads will get around each other, hang out together till they wake up all drunk and things like that, and that's common. That's common. So I was very lucky to have a dad that didn't do that. That really put me as his priority.
Yeah, I love that. And how did that shape? I mean, did you know any different? I mean, in the moment, right? You only ever know kind of what you grow up in, and as you grow up, it's hard to see, at least at that age. You tend to think that your situation is common amongst your friends and everyone else, that it's like that. But I'm curious if how that affected you in the moment, if you were able to recognize uh, that as opposed to other dads in your culture, as you mentioned.
So it was very clear that we were trying to do something different, you know. Um, of course, the influence of trying to live the gospel is something, it's a keystone there. I could not deny it. And that's just one of the many testimonies that I have that, yes, this thing works, even though we may not understand things here and there, or we may conflict with doctrinal points. Well, put just the simple aspects of living the gospel wherever in the globe, and you're gonna have a strong foundation to have kids that can have a better chance to succeed in life. So I did see that, like growing up with all my buddies. Most of them were not, all of them were not members of the church or even acquainted
Right.
with this type of setting. Um, and my very close friends that I'm still friends with them, um, they did have a different set of values. It wasn't necessarily associated with the church because they were not members, but their households were really in tune with what my parents tried to do. And I did see that, for example, my parents would go out to meet them and to assure what type of things were taught at their homes, for example,
Hmm.
so that they didn't conflict with what they were trying to teach us. So that made a difference there.
Yeah, I'm gonna relate to that as well. I had a really good set of friends, and I don't think I really understood how how much of an effect the family has on your ability to succeed growing up, because my friends all had great, yeah, I mean, they were all good dudes. Their parents were well involved in their lives. They had a good set of values. And so, for me, I didn't really quite understand how messed up life could be, if you didn't have a good set of parents to teach you good values, or at least a good community or good friends. You could have a good influence from another male, uh, kind of father figure of sorts, right? Or good influences that way. And so I think that's a great point. And I didn't grow to that wisdom until much later. And I used to look at other people and say, well, why do they act out like that? Or, why do
Hmm.
they they should know how to behave better, and I tended to project my experiences or the places where I came up on other people. So I didn't quite have that wisdom uh because of, the surroundings that I was in was really good, and so it was a hard learned lesson, I think, when, at least in Argentina, when really my eyes were open to how different things could be in a
Yeah.
different family situation. And so,
Well, I'll tell you what, like me personally, for me, it was more of a roller coaster. I can tell you this right now, but growing up, I I wasn't like behaving to the standards that I was supposed to be behaving, you know. I made a lot of wrong choices and uh, very intentional, very intentional. I can tell you that I was not doing what I was supposed to do. And that has its consequences, you know. And I was brought to understand that through some hard knocks here and there, maybe at the right time, but still, I feel that the way that my parents handle it was good. That was tailored to my rebellious soul. That's
for
how I would
sure.
put it. So,
Well, I know that the way you've described it in the past, at least this stuck in my mind as I've looked to parent my kids, right? Is, we all have this innate, it's just human nature to have something called psychological reactance, which is when someone wants to force you to do something or control, the situation, you tend to dig in harder and refuse to do that thing.
mhm.
And so that's a part of the wisdom, I think, that I remember from your experiences, from the way that you said that your parents handled that. And I thought that was so wise, because now look at where you are now, right? It's the more that someone tries to control, the more you rebel and the more you try to break out, right? And so it's,
Yeah, it's like a try to control this statement,
yeah.
you know? It's like, yeah, you go ahead and try to control me, but ain't working. But but in the end, I don't know. God has his own mysteries on how to let you know that he cares. And when you feel that, then you do have a chance to succeed. And that's me, and I'm very lucky because that I I could not I couldn't put it in another way. Like
Mhm.
I'm just grateful that I was receptive to his voice and his influence.
I love that. And I mean, you talk about that. How did that transition happen to where I mean, you can go as in depth as you'd like to on this, but when that transition happened, right, you obviously made choices that were different than your standards, and then you decided to, you know, to go on a mission and to kind of have that focus on a bigger picture.
Yeah,
How did, well, can you, if you want to
that's
briefly explain to that as we kind
yeah,
of transition to, how you met your wife, and then getting more
yeah.
into that manhood and fatherhood aspect.
I love to. So I think that's the tipping point of who I am right now. Like the way I was living my teenage era was destructive in many senses. And there came a time when I was doing school, but I was still making poor choices. And I was focused on finishing up school because I knew that by doing so, I'll have a better leverage in life. So I was doing architecture school, and that's pretty ludic. You know, it's art
Right.
school, so you get to experience things that you're not supposed to. Um, and I was all in, full throttle, and that was destructive. However, when I turned, when I was about to turn well, I was turning 18, I think, and I was all set. I was telling my parents like, hey, I don't think I'll do a mission. By the way, if you were even hopeful about that. I believe that like putting time off from school is gonna bring me a payout. Um, and I, I'll pass. It's a hard pass. Don't even, don't try to control this again, because it's not gonna work. And at that particular moment, I told this to both my parents. They were in bed. It was like late at night. We were having this discussion, and they came into a full silence for like 2, 3 minutes, and then my dad said, "Have you considered asking God about this decision?" And man, I never felt anything like that before. You know, it was like if God Himself was telling me, "Hey, have you even considered like asking me where you're going with all the so-called choices you're making right now?" And that was a very humbling experience for me. That very night, I kneeled and I displayed to God what I wanted to accomplish in this mortal time. And it was a very tender experience, but I felt right there clear, like, hey, I want you to go. I don't care what you're doing right now. Put it together, go on a mission. I'll take care of you. And that was so powerful. Now, I'll tell you that I didn't fix a lot of the things that I was doing right there and then. Sadly, I should have done it. Um, but I went on a mission, and I had a couple interviews to just make sure that I was understanding what it would take for me to walk that path of trying to carry Jesus' name without being fully prepared to do so, but still, that was my best chance. And I served, and I think I served at the measure of my capacity. Like I really changed many of my ways in that regard. And I knew that from there on, I wasn't going to be the same. So right when I came back, um, I was very focused on finding my eternal companion, and I had good experiences and bad experiences, like having Clay Holmes as my companion. It's something that
I was
teaches
gonna
you
say
that.
18 weeks of hell for you, my friend.
Well, that was a lot of weeks. I didn't count them, but no, no. You get to experience, like, if there's a missionary that comes home and don't know what to expect from a companion, that's a lie. Because I mean, you kind of live with someone, and you kind of understand what to expect from living with someone else, and it has a lot to do with service
Mhm.
and yielding to righteousness and humbling yourself and fixing up, and it takes a lot of atonement, a lot of repentance to make it work.
And it never ends.
It never ends. It never ends. It never ends. Um,
Uh,
and there's a lot of like funny things that we can do and say about it, but if you scale that to the next level, which is I want to make a covenant with this other individual, that's a big deal.
mhm.
That's a big deal. You can't take that lightly. And if you do take it seriously, you'll be blessed along the way. So I went for that. I went for the whole home run there. Um, I was dating this girl. She wasn't ready, and I knew it right there and then. And I was back home like 2 weeks. Um, and I knew right there and then that that wasn't gonna work. And I brought my conversation with God again. Like, hey, I I know that we've discussed this. Like I'm supposed to be moving forward, yep, and this is on you, kind of thing. Not in those terms, because it's never on him. He's blessed me tremendously. But I remember that just about when I was about to leave the mission, I prayed this goal, and what I received was, well, if it's not her, it'll be someone even better. Like I'll take care of you, and that remained there. So I was just trying to have this conversation with him, and in a matter of a week, I met who is now my wife, and that that experience for us was amazing. We were into many different situations that shaped who we are and what we wanted in life. My wife has um, it's a very complete individual. She's an amazing professional, but upon everything, she wants to please God, and she wants to please God in a way that I call that my insurance policy. Like if there is any chance that I don't feel like, yeah, that's something that I would pass or I would not do the best. She's right there. She's like, part of the deal with me is like I'm wearing high. And I love that. I don't see that as a chastise. I see it more like this is where I chose to be. And this is the way that God reminds me that I'm not alone, that He really cares for me because He has assigned such an amazing individual to be by my side and to build our family together. So all of our relationship was based on a lot of service in the church, a lot of exposure to different business models that we could implement in our family model, um, and things that we're still working out, like my career, her career, what is next.
Sorry, my camera I think overheated again. I thought I fixed it.
Okay, okay. Should we move on or what?
Yeah, we can keep
Yeah.
going
Okay.
if you don't mind.
No, yeah, I'm fine. But yeah, so I think to to have that exposure where you are having an active engagement in different things throughout your relationship before you even talk about marriage is crucial to get to know each other and to get to know if you can share parenthood with another individual, and that was my blessing right there, that I was able to see that she was able to see my competencies, even though in many senses they're like super weak, and I'm a slow learner in many ways, but I'm grateful that we're both putting the work to make it work.
Oh yeah, for sure. And kind of along that on that front, how did that transition? You guys had such a strong foundation, and when you guys, well, I always like to ask this. What was it like when your first child was born? I always like to ask this because this is such a great question because so many dads react so many different ways, and so I'm curious what that was like for you.
Yeah. So first of all, our first child was born in Costa Rica, so that made the whole deal very different because even though, let's say that you are on Medicare here in the States, man, your experience, it's nowhere close to a third world country hospital experience, Like it's very nice in here.
Well,
So,
yeah. What's that like? I guess now that I'm on that, I didn't think about that, but
well, I was there with Andrea throughout the process of she like giving birth. Um, but it was very hostile because you are using one of their beds, and that bed needs to be uh, ready for someone else in a matter of a certain period of time that it's very short, call it 3, 5 hours. So whenever you get there, they're gonna make you give birth. And for someone as empowered as my wife is, that's an abuse, you know? Like she wasn't looking forward to um, set up a how do you call it? You give birth in a natural way or
Yeah. Yeah. C-section.
in a C-section, right? And
Right.
here it's like going to McDonald's and you kind of schedule your C-section and yeah, I'll do it this way this day because prior there I'm going to do my nails and my hair and she's not like that, you know. She's like, hey, I want to feel my body. I want to give birth when I'm ready and I will know because I will know. And she was like getting ready about that and reading books and this and that. And it was kind of an abusive situation. Like, hey, you just gotta give birth right now in the next couple hours. So that was horrible. And then it happened. I had our beautiful Ariana, and so fragile, so small, and all of this responsibility. It's now just so tangible of hey,
Yeah.
how am I gonna make this goal to make it to MIT and Harvard and and get a grasp of the world? No, not that. But how am I gonna make sure that she gets the right challenges in this life that will make the best out of her? And that was very clear. And I couldn't stay in the hospital because of this third world country experience. And we
Oh,
could have. I'll tell you what, Clay. Like right there, my wife was getting laid off from Intel because they were redistributing their engineering processes down in Costa
mhm.
Rica and throughout the globe. So she was just getting laid off, and about a couple weeks after Ariana was born, she was called to come to the States, like full reload, um, full moving package for our family, and we had that discussion. But right there and then, when Ariana was getting born, we could have picked to go to a private hospital and just pay it out. We had the means, but we were very conscious that um, our family wasn't in the best financial shape, that we needed to be present if necessary. We needed to have our savings in place. We needed to have a escape plan B, C, D, and up to Z if necessary,
Yeah.
and things like that in place. So that made it so that we would take full advantages of things that would not cost, and that was one of them. The hospital down there was just it's just free for everybody, but it has a price. If it's not comfortable, they're probably not going to die, but you know, it's a different situation. So it was amazing to have her in my arms and to experience that I was now um, given the opportunity to become even a better self so that she would have a real chance to succeed.
Yeah. And so she has a good standard for where she should hold the people that she will eventually date and marry, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It it's truly amazing that that first time, and it's not to put down the rest of your case. Each one is its own unique experience, right? But that
Rinse and
first one where
repeat.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That first time though is truly something. It's because you don't, at least for me, I didn't feel like it was real. Like, oh, okay, I'm a dad, she's pregnant, right? But it's different because you don't feel the kid, you
It's
don't hold
different.
the kid. It's not real until, at least for me, it wasn't this way until the kid was out and in my arms. It truly is this like existential experience. And
Yeah. It changes because I'll tell you what, the second and the third child, now you're looking to, hey, how am I make it so that the baby don't kill the baby? You know, it's like, man,
Yes.
it can happen at any given moment if you're not present, you know, and it's crazy, but it gives you
Uh,
perspective too. Like, hey,
oh man.
let's see
Yeah.
how to work that around. But yeah, so we had our second child, and that's Ruben. And Ruben, um, he was diagnosed with a pleural effusion, and what that means is he had some sort of extra liquid in his pulmonary chamber that needed to be taken out. The sooner the better kind of thing. So
Mhm.
we were prepared, and that was back in Arizona when we lived in Arizona. Um, all the staff in the hospital was ready for us and ready with the situation to address it promptly and precisely, and they did a great job. um, I wasn't that concerned for the birth this time, but more concerned with all the logistics of how to address this situation so that he has more chances to successfully pass along this trial that he had. Um, and I was there like 40 days in the NICU after the whole recovery process and all that. I just staged at the hospital. I lived there. Um, Pretty different from our prior experience. Um, and I had like many accommodations made so that it was comfortable, and I'm very grateful with Chandler Regional for all that they did for us. Second day comes in when after his birth, and we didn't know that you had like physical characteristics in regards to having Down syndrome or not. But I was looking for a small child, and on that second day, they told us, "Hey, he has Down syndrome. How do you want to handle this?" There's a safe haven for Down syndrome kiddos, and right there and then it's like a lot of information you're receiving, right?
Yeah.
And whenever we've been like bringing our kids into this life, we've been prompted to do so. Like if it was for me, I would hold, man. I would hold like 10, 15 years because it's a big deal.
It
So
is a huge, I'm laughing
are
because it's
you in or
relatable.
not? Yeah, yeah. So I would just hold, you know, I would just hold my cards. I don't need to show the cards.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
God has been very clear, like, hey, I have a child for you, and this is a very special child. Are you ready for him or for her? And we knew that Reuben was assigned to us from the very beginning. So to just have that opportunity of placing him in a safe haven, it wasn't something we were looking for, but it's pretty common. Um, and we had that as a chance, which is kind of like pretty capitalistic from my point of view. It's like, dude, it's a
Totally.
human being. It's mine. I
You
made
guys
it.
mine. How could you a safe haven? The safe haven is my home. Are you kidding me? Yeah, not a
So
chance. No one's gonna love
we
that child more than me.
absolutely, absolutely. Now we at that moment when we had this situation, we knew that that was one of the purposes why we moved here. Because the amount of opportunities, the amount of aids, you gotta see him like he is the showman at school. Everyone knows him. Everyone loves him tremendously. Um, if he hears some music, he's gonna start like dancing right there and then. He doesn't care, man. He doesn't care for what is politically and socially correct. He is going to love everybody and give you a smile, you know.
Love it.
And it's something that if it wasn't for by having him in our home, we would not be experiencing this. We would not be experiencing that it would take him 5x times to take a shower. You know, He takes his time in life, and you gotta work those lots of things around. Or hey, you gotta put your pajamas on. Yeah, I will. And it's like if you watch Zootopia, Flash, the
Yeah.
sloth, it's
Yep.
just like having Flash at home.
That's
It's
so
it's
funny.
in many senses, unless there's ice cream involved or chocolate milk or some sort of a pasta that he loves. So you gotta know what are
Oh,
his weak points so that you can leverage on those.
I love it.
Um, but he is very transparent. He's very transparent. He'll tell you that he loves you or that he is having a hard time with you right there. He's not gonna
You know what?
keep it for himself.
The world could use more of that, though, I will tell
I
you.
believe so. Yeah, in some ways it's like a little Trump. He's like he doesn't care about political correctness and all of that. So yeah.
Oh,
But
that's funny.
does Trump has Down syndrome? I don't know. He might. He might. We'll see his full potential in next life. But
Yeah, well, for sure.
no, he's been a tremendous blessing, and it's exactly what we needed in our house. Now, because of having him, we did delay having our next child. We
Hmm.
felt that was no, I'm sorry. We actually didn't. We were planning on delaying having our next child, and we felt the prompt that we needed someone to put some challenge on him and speed his process up. And that's what Alejandro does with all our life. He's a dynamo. He's pushing everyone to the edge, and
Uh,
and he is amazing by doing so. He is a tender blessing that we needed. Because of him, like helping Ruben with all his aid, especially at the very beginning, um, like a normal crawling for Ruben took a good year, a good year and a half, I believe. But when he was turning 2, he was able to walk, and it does sound like, yeah, that's kind of common, but it was because of the aid he received. At that point, since I just transitioned to the States, didn't, I wasn't working. I didn't have a work permit. So I stayed home with him, and I was just pretty much helping with all his development at that point in time. And it was a great blessing to even be able to do that.
hmm.
Um, and to
Right.
see him grow and to see him like getting chubby after we saw him struggling at the hospital for not getting um, his um, his ratios of food that he needed. So it's been quite a journey, but especially on those like first 3-4 years, constant visits to the hospital. Anything like respiratory infection, like call it a flu, cold. He had them all. He has the whole portfolio of what an
Jeez.
infection could look
Truth.
up, and
Holy
we
moly.
spent like a normal flu for him would take him to the hospital because he couldn't bear the oxygen levels above the 90% required, right? So uh, we stayed in the hospital many nights, and I know that there's people that has it like way worse. So I'm very respectful, but I'm just sharing my journey. It
Yeah.
was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot because instead of me producing and focusing on, well, how can I, do this business and that, it was always that, well, how am I the right age for this individual? So that is kind of hard. But Alejandro has helped so much in his development. And even today, like Ruben is 7, turning 8 very soon, and Ale is 5, turning 6 in September. And he's just a force, you know. If one condition with Down syndrome is the low muscular tone, and because of having Alejandro around, like Ruben tries to put himself next to him in so many ways. So if they're doing like the monkey bars at the playground, Ruben has the opportunity to reach out a couple of those bars. That if it wasn't because of Ale, he wouldn't even try it, or he
Yeah.
would give up sooner than later. And that's all thankfully to Alejandro. And yeah, he drives us all nuts and crazy, and we're trying to keep it together. But we needed him in our home. We needed him. We needed his vibe and his influence of just dynamo activity in our life.
I love it. I love it. Gosh, that's such a cool story and a cool it's a cool experience for the both of them and for you guys to be able to see that and be a part of that.
For sure.
That
Now,
that's
after
so
having Alejandro, and because he's like he's the personality that he would kill a baby. We did
right,
we did
right.
delay a little bit for Abril because we were very concerned. Like, dude, this guy, and my mom told me that all the time. That's why she delayed so much in between me and my brother, because she was like, he will kill him. And I probably would. I still think about it,
Whether
like,
on purpose or on
yeah, no,
accident.
no, it's very intentional. Yeah, it's very intentional.
Both
Yeah,
on
yeah,
purpose and on accident, is
right.
yeah, both of those things coming.
I'll make the stage, but it was intentional. No,
right.
I love my brother, and I needed him in my life for sure. But yeah, those are things that you just feel, and you're kind of entitled to make those decisions. I would say though, um, try to hear and listen the influence of God, and um what are his plans for you, because he has them. You just gotta sort them out. You gotta read the code. You gotta read the footnotes there of what specs is he calling and things like that, and
Yeah,
and you'll figure the way out and the way up and the way in.
I love it. I love it. So, yeah, as we're coming up on the last couple minutes here, Ron,
Yeah,
I mean that's a phenomenal, phenomenal story there. I was curious if you had. I mean, that's some superb advice. Is there any other pieces of advice or things that stick out? Oh, the other thing I wanted to just briefly mention here too. I know we talked about the language barrier in your communication with your kids. So there's just that quick aspect of you came from Costa Rica, right? They're learning Spanish and English in the home. Talk to me about that dynamic really quickly, and then we'll sign off here.
yeah. So I heard so many parents telling me like, "Hey, it is such a blessing for you to have that natural immersion program at home where you speak Spanish to your kids, and then they go out and they have to speak and learn English." And I think it's a tremendous blessing because yes, there are a lot of businesses and a lot of opportunities that come out from just being bilingual. But at the same time, and something that I've talked to my wife is, well, we can do any efforts here to keep Spanish as a language that they will learn and maybe even technically speak and work their way around it. And yet, their primary language is going to be English, and more important, the way we express our feelings and the way we point them in the right direction, or the way we have those important conversations, might take us to do even a better job to fully integrate whatever language they need to hear those things in. And that
Yeah,
would take us to expedite more our process of speaking better English, or experiencing, or even learning better and more suitable words that we can use for them, or else. But I just want to point out that it is important to consider that, like, let's talk the language of love for sure. What would that mean for each one of them? Um, I think it's English, but who knows,
Yeah,
right?
right. Well, that's kind of been on my mind too. Is they say, well, teach your kids Spanish. You know Spanish, and it's like it's so difficult for me to engage in that because I do know, and I'm pretty fluent, and
Yeah,
I feel like I can speak it, but it's
did a great
those
job.
natural feelings. It's those natural feelings of
Mhm.
what naturally is going to come out, and so that's where it became really interesting to try to engage there. So that's a cool perspective on that because I think a lot of the people who might see this, there's a lot of questions around, well, I wonder how that dynamic works in your
Yeah.
in the home there and what you guys
Yeah,
like to
and
do. So
here what we try to do is, yeah, they like we try to urge them to speak Spanish here. And not only like gringo Spanish, but real Spanish, like
right.
full integrated Spanish. Like I want to see those accents and those dots and how you separate those words. And yeah, I want you reading in Spanish too. And I want you to communicate with your grandparents in Spanish in the best way possible.
I
Um,
love it.
and it's important. It's important. I'll say just that word of caution. Like in the end, what is the language that they need to listen and hear that you love them, for example? And I know with my kids, like I'll tell you right now, it's English. It's English. Like I tell them that I love them from the bottom of my heart, in English, and we have the big conversations are in English too. So, um,
But you're
no,
really good in
it's cool.
English too. That was
I'm
something that
trying.
surprised me so much
I'll be a
when I
live
was in
learner.
Argentina. Yeah, I was like, holy cow, how did you? It's truly amazing because English is such a
The rebellious
let me be
language. That's
nice to
why
it.
we connect
I'm
with.
trying to keep it nice. But English is not a nice language in terms of learning. You have all different kinds of exceptions and rules that just don't make any
Yeah,
sense. So at least Spanish was way more straightforward, and you can read it a lot easier, and it
it's
sounds
like
better.
math. Yeah, yeah, it's like math. Spanish is like math in many senses. But English, it's like arts. It's subjective and rebellious. So I like it. I love it. I think it's a blessing to listen to the prophet in his own language. And who
For
knows?
sure.
There might be a Mexican prophet one of these days. Why not? Why not?
For sure.
Who
For
knows?
sure.
Or Costa Rican, I don't think so, but who knows? He'll God will call whoever he needs to call. So
Who he's gonna call, right? Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I know we're wrapping up time here, and it's do you have any final words of advice or anything else that you wanted to say about fatherhood and masculinity
I would
as my
say
camera gives out again?
I would I would put it in different stages. First, as a man, what an opportunity to um to know that God is also a man and that we fall very short from what he is and how he loves us. We will never comprehend that in this life, but it seems like manhood, being a dad, being a real man, doesn't have to be with what type of a sporty or nice truck you drive or how much you bring home, but it has to do with how are you fully engaged in giving your kids the opportunity to succeed in what for God is important that they succeed in. That that there. Now in regards relationship, aim high. Aim so high that it blows your mind. Aim tremendously high because that will serve you well. And then if you move forward along this type of relationship, when you're aiming high, you have set the stage to not only your success, but those of your kids. And what a blessing it is to have a mom fully engaged in this um, tremendous job of being present and be what they need you to be. So I covered being a man and this relationship concept, and then when you are already in a marriage, constantly evaluate what needs to be better. Constantly evaluate what will challenge you and what will make you um, sound and breathe louder, breathe with more joy, being more um, grateful with this experience around us of living and of breathing and experiencing colors and textures in this moral experience that we're in. So aim high and keep it high, keep it challenging, keep it nice. Remember those days when we were just flirting with a girl, and you were just trying to make your statement. Remember that you were there at a certain point, and what are you making so that your marriage is still like this kind of a joyful experience,
Yeah.
bringing something new and something unexpected, and yeah, a lot of grow and a lot of humility to change and be better.
I love it. That is some sage advice. And with that, thank you so much, Ron, for joining me and taking some time out of your Saturday. And on that
Anytime,
note,
man.
I'll let you go be present for your kids. And
I appreciate it. Hey, I love you. I love your family. I love what you're doing on this podcast, and I'm looking forward to keep learning from all your interviewers here. So
yeah, me too. If we have more like this is going to be fantastic. And so, like we always like to say, right on those notes of of advice that you just gave, right? Let's all go live our legacy, gentlemen, and let's do good, be good for our relationships and our families, and let's continue to be better. So, love you, Ron. Thanks for joining us, and everybody. We'll
love
see
you,
you on
man.
the next episode.
See ya.